Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our evening session, our last session. It is my pleasure here to welcome our speakers, Rodney and Séverine from Agrarian Kitchen in Tasmania. Jeanne, she's a farmer from Sredne. Ana Roš, she doesn't need any introduction, I guess. Iñaki Bolumburu, he's a chef from Basque Country working in Amsterdam. And Santiago Lastra, Mexican chef working in London. So tonight's... Okay. So tonight we will talk about the future of food, the future of menu. I would like to begin this by asking our Prime Minister, Robert Golob, for like a short notes before we start. Please, Mr. Golob.
Good evening, everyone. I guess it has been a long day for all of us, not just me. But let me start with a short remark. When I got here, I immediately heard complaints about the food outside, that it was only vegan. Okay, my comment is get used to it. That's where we are getting to. And I'm not speaking that I'm totally vegan, don't worry, no. And I know that you'll be discussing all the advanced techniques of how to prepare food, how to choose, actually how to produce, choose, and then prepare food, and what to do not to waste any of it. Very good. Of course, this is like advanced techniques, and it's going to take a lot of time for all of this to really come into our regular life. But nevertheless, the things that we see outside, and this is extreme weather, it's not something that the nature throws at us, you know, just for the sake of it. It's something that it was us, humans, that produced the nature to react in that way. Climate change is something which we will need to address it in a absolutely more radical way that we did it before. And agriculture and food, it's part of the problem at the moment. It can become part of the solution. And yes, I believe that the panel is going to contribute to that as well. But unless we change our behavior, there is nothing that the nature can do against us, but throw rainfall. And that's not really how we want to live in the future. So yes, food, it's important, definitely important topic. I'm a foodie myself, and I like the vegan outside, even though I'm totally full. But again, we need to find solutions which are tasty, not just good for the environment, which are sustainable, which are seasonal, and as possible, as local as possible, as locally produced as possible as well. And once we get this to become mainstream and not just the night owl session, I think all of us will be not just more sustainable or more environmental friendly, but we will be more healthy as well. And I think saying no to meat consumption, eating that much meat as we do, especially in Slovenia and Europe, it's not just about the choice for the planet, it is also the choice for ourselves, for our body. Believe me, I've been there. I abandoned meat, for one reason, because I had the allergic reaction to it, and I feel totally much healthier now. I cured my asthma once I renounced meat. The doctors don't believe it. It was dairy as well, not just meat, but that's what happened with me. I'm not saying every and each illness can be really cured by just changing the diet, but hey, if I helped one person in the room, my mission has been done. Wish you all a good session, and I'm looking forward to listening to you.
Thank you very much. So I want to start with Rodney and Séverine. I've known Anna for many years, and I have rarely heard her speak so highly of a place as she does about Agrarian Kitchen. So you have created something really special in Tasmania, which is like really remote and really far, and you had created this amazing circular system of zero waste. Can you perhaps talk a little bit about the whole project and what do you do there?
Yeah, so look, it's a project that started out simply as a quest for flavour. And where we've ended up, I look back and we've come so far, and I always like to use the phrase down a rabbit hole, the twists and turns. And basically, the quest started out to produce the tastiest food we could, and at a certain point understanding that that was going to be as local as possible. And so having a garden with the restaurant and with the cooking school, we look at, we see ourselves as, yes, providing food and providing classes, but education is the key to the whole thing. But it's really about the garden and starting with the soil. So what we look at is to create the healthiest soil. We're soil farmers. We create the healthiest soil we can possibly create. We use systems of no-dig. We don't till our soil. We layer, we create compost, which comes via the restaurant waste back into our system to grow the vegetables again. So that compost is fungally dominated and plenty of bacteria, but fungally dominated. And we use a system that is not turning the compost even, because restaurant waste is very high in nitrogen. We have to balance that out with our carbon source. And the problem that we had was basically if you take a big pile of food waste and you put it in a pile at the back of your restaurant, you're going to be feeding a whole species of things that you really don't want to have around a restaurant, meaning the rodents. So our system is a system that is contained. Therefore, we have to feed, we have to add microbes that can work in that sort of a system. So we add anaerobic microbes. Now, no waste is, obviously high in our priorities. So we'd have problems and we'd create solutions for that. So one of the big problems for our waste was, we were dealing with our waste from the restaurant, our vegetable waste, our meat waste, everything goes back into that system. But we had a bunch of bones left. The animals that we do use, we get in and we obviously use from head to tail, so no waste there. The bones at the end go into making a stock. After that, they still look like a bone and act like a bone. And so we couldn't very well put that into the compost. You end up years later with bones. So what we did is we put it through our wood-fired oven in the restaurant and create a charcoal. And now that charcoal then gets crushed up. We add our microbes to that charcoal. So the microbes have been given a home because the charcoal is very porous. And then so we've given them a home, the microbe hotel we call it. We add that into the compost and we've given them a food source. They go to work breaking it down, and that takes about a year. And then that goes back on to our vegetable beds to grow more vegetables. Now, other waste streams from the restaurant create our nitrogen in terms of any fish waste gets fermented and put back onto the garden. Our oyster shells get roasted as well, added to our vinegar, pulls apart the calcium and a little bit of phosphorus, and that gets added back as well. So what we've managed to create out of this journey that started in creating tasty food is to create a self-sustaining system in a restaurant that serves many people each week. We figure we save about 12 tonne of waste, which would normally go into a landfill system, and at the other end actually save money by creating all of the fertility that goes back into the garden. So that's, in a nutshell, what is very complicated, Kaja, simplified as much as possible in a limited time.
Now, the downside of running this super impressive project is you're running it in Tasmania, and let's face it, not a lot of foodies, not a lot of people go to Tasmania. How do you spread the word about your project?
Look, that's the difficult thing, I guess, the marketing of it, and I think Anna's been amazing in helping with that, and the reason why I'm here today and Severine's here today. But, you know, it's little by little, it's step by step. So the people that do come, a lot of recommendations, people go, you have to go and see that garden, you have to go and eat in that restaurant. But, yeah, look, it is always a difficult thing because, you know, what you're presenting is a little bit, it's hard to sell that value to people outside of foams and gels and, you know, the wow factor. Getting people to understand that how you feel, and it's interesting hearing the Prime Minister talk about, you know, how he feels eating good vegetables, and that's the thing. I like to think people go away feeling good and, you know, tell other people.
So you were telling us about the soil and how basically growing the vegetables is first to grow soil, right? So I want to jump to Jeanne now. She's from Canada, and she's been living here in Slovenia, in Sredne, in this small village, and she is, together with her partner Mateo, they have a farm, and they're producing vegetables for Hiša Franko. Jeanne, please tell us, you know, Slovenia is a very green country. We pride ourselves in being foragers, in living in very close connection to nature. One thing is that sometimes bureaucracy and red tape, you know, plays a big role of how much can you actually work in sync with nature and organically. Can you tell us maybe what kind of hurdles are you facing working the way you are working, which is regenerative farming?
Sorry, you said what kind of?
Hurdles.
Okay. What does it mean?
Obstacles.
Okay. But the fact that Slovenia is a very green country, very beautiful country, and so on, it's one of the reasons why we decided to do agriculture in this very specific place. And there's a lot of advantage, and there's a lot of things that are really hard as well. We're growing vegetable in a mountain, like 700 meters high, and it's a place that was abandoned for like 60 years. So the soil was, because we also do no dig like they do, so we don't use any tractor or any machine. We do everything by hands. We don't till as well the soil. So we do this layer with compost, and the advantage, one of the very beautiful advantage of this place is that a lot of the wild plants that are growing, a lot of things that we could even like forage like that and eat, they are also very nutritious for the soil. So there is a lot of like cloves, for example, there is a lot of nettle that we can just cut and add to our soil, or also to make tea, to water and fertilize the plant. So it can be very easily closed circle, because we've been there in Sredne for 4 years now, and we've been in Slovenia for 7 years, and in a very short time we could be, I mean, we are not as people self-sufficient, but our garden is kind of self-sufficient because we don't use anything that is out from the place where we grow. So it's 20 hectares, the garden is about 1 hectare, and we used only the things that we forage there. We have goats as well, but the goats they go in the pasture there, so basically the manure is also from what they eat, so it's from there. So the advantage, it was quite difficult because it's really wild and it's also mountains, so it's not flat. You couldn't really work there with a tractor. We have also spring water. We are really lucky to have water, because even last year during the drought we still had some water, not that much, but we could still water from this source of water. So this is a very good advantage. I think like now we should either then thinking of a place where it's easy to work. It's maybe better to think about a place where you have the element, where you have the resources to do agriculture. Because the main problem is this, it's that we decide a place where we want to do agriculture because it's easy to work there. It's easy to work with a tractor, it's easy to do that. And then you don't have the resources. You don't have water, you don't have this plant that you can use to fertilize your land. You don't have like enough sun, or it's not warm enough, or it's too warm and stuff like that. So in a certain way, there it's difficult to work with machine, but we have all the resources we need. So irrigation is one thing, but to do irrigation, you need water. So the thing is, before of thinking about a place where it's easy to put an irrigation system, you should think about a place where you have a source of water. Because the water is, if there is no water, your irrigation system is useless. And it's the same thing with tractor, and it's the same thing with all the machine. The time that we won't have resources anymore, all these things won't be useful. So the first thing to think, it's a place where you have the resources. And the first thing that you have to think is to enhance the place where you are. It's not that you have to adapt a place to your needs. You have to adapt, and you have to understand what this place needs. And this was what we wanted to do in Srednje, in that place. We wanted to try many things and to try to understand what was good to grow there, and not necessarily the fact that we are foreigner as well, maybe we had not, maybe we feel more free to create in this place and to try things, because maybe we were not necessarily stuck in something that needs to be the tradition. And because of that, we try different things. There is lots of things that we notice that it doesn't work, but I still think that this is a very good place to grow vegetable because of the potential of the soil, the potential of what surrounds us, but we have to be very creative, and we have to be very curious as well to try to understand what the place needs. Not what we want to eat, or not what we would like to grow. Because if we think like that, we will always need more infrastructure, we will always need more tools, but we will not have more food. So we need to start to be ourselves creative, not to try to follow one path. And we need to listen, we need to observe, and we need to be very flexible. And I think there is a lot of places like that, and there is a lot of places like that that are abandoned, while a lot of places that are not good for agriculture are developed, and there is a lot of forests that are cut, or there is a lot of place where you shouldn't grow anything, that are used to do agriculture for the only fact that that you can use a tractor and you can use machines, and that they are easy to work. But if we want to create food that is nutritious, we want to create food that is healthy, it's not just about what you spray or you don't spray on it. It's really about what element, even the water you use to water it, even the things you use to fertilize it, how healthy is your soil. So it's not just about the fact of not using chemicals and poison on it, or to conserve the fruit and this transportation and all these things. The resources you use to grow is also very important. And for these things, Slovenia is still a country that is really green, a lot of water, a lot of natural places, but there is also some part of Slovenia that are starting to be really overused by agriculture, like for wine, for other kind of culture, and it's all in the same spot. And this thing of monoculture also, it's something that we have to think about. And this is why I was saying, like, being creative, it's very important, because monoculture in any way, if it's about wine, if it's about corn, if it's about potatoes, it's destructive. It's destructive. So we have to reinvent and not be stuck in the tradition, and we have to reinvent and being also inspired about other things that is happening in other places. It's not just about what we've seen before.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to restaurants now a little bit. So Anna, you have been using the resources of, your region of Soča Valley. You have been promoting local products a lot. But you mentioned something yesterday which I found really interesting, is about the limitations of how much you can develop as a restaurant with guests' expectations. So now you run a 2 Michelin star restaurant, and guests' expectations can be a bit different than your philosophy. And your philosophy has always been, in touch with nature, local products, which can be poor products, products of Soča Valley, not necessarily luxury items. But then you have guests who come in and they expect caviar and lobster and kruk, and you're serving, let's say, natural wines and, potato. So how, as a chef, can you work with the expectations of guests in a place like a 2 Michelin star restaurant?
Okay, first of all, good evening to everyone. Well, it's a tricky question. I could have like all 90 minutes just for myself. Yesterday, almost all panelists have been at dinner in Hiša Franko, and before they were like starting eating, I was reflecting, as every time, that I have clients that mean something to me if they're gonna understand like all the hard work that is behind what you really eat in Hiša Franko. It's like 20 years of work trying to find faces, producers, farmers, foragers, not one, but 5, 6, because there is one who is collecting berries, the other one who comes in with all white plants, the third one who is picking just, the things, rowan berries, for instance, that you need to climb on the trees. We have some people with gardens. The base is, of course, Jeanne and Matteo, but we have a few other people who maybe grow just a potato for us. So maybe I would stick on this potato because I told the story to the table yesterday. Like the menu of Hiša Franko is super reasonable regarding the food cost because I act super micro-local and super seasonal. So it means that the ingredient that is used in Hiša Franko out of some contaminations, which are maybe 2%, doesn't travel longer than 50 kilometers around the house, which is considered like 0 kilometer approach. 70 kilometers is actually the boundary for the 0 kilometer approach. And but what does 0 kilometer approach mean to a client? So the story of a potato that I have explained to the table yesterday actually tells a lot. So there is a dish that is called a potato and sour butter that we make at home. And this potato is beautifully cooked in a crust made out of hay and salt. And we invite people to, break the crust and smell it. You feel like a Heidi in a book, sleeping in a hay bed, and then you buy the potato, which of course we a little bit perforate so the potato absorbs the flavor of the hay, and you really feel like being in a high mountain, and then you eat this butter together, and you don't know whether you're in a fine dining restaurant or you just remember your grandmother who was doing something like that. But then that potato, that's not just a potato. So the value of vegetable can be a lot more from what we think. So I found a farmer in Šentviška Planota, which is around half an hour driving from Kobarid, a pretty abandoned place, beautiful. Whoever has time, spend a weekend there. And that is actually a super educated guy. He studied and graduated in mathematics, and he has a girlfriend who worked in design. And they said, no, thank you for life in Ljubljana. They moved back to the origins. So what do you do in the Soča Valley? You actually farm or escape, 2 things. So he decided to start growing potatoes. So he came to Hiša last year and he said, should we do something together? And I was like, yeah, what do you grow? He was like, potatoes, brown beans, and garlic, that's it. And I was like, of course, I'll take whatever you have. So this year the potatoes were ready. And he said like, anything specific? And I was like, yeah, it's a size. I really need a potato of around 40 grams because, you know, it's a cooking time, and then in a fine dining to Michelin star restaurant, you expect everything to be really cooked perfectly. So since you have 40 guests, you need to uniform the way you prepare things. And he was like, 40 grams. But it's a small potato. And I was like, yeah, it's a small potato. And he said, okay, so I need to stop the growth of these mountain potatoes. And I think like Šentviška planota is maybe, let's say 800 meters above the sea level, because Kobarid is honestly only 250. It looks super high mountain, but it's a low valley. And then when he brought me the first potatoes to try, they were really beautiful. And he said, should we talk about the price? And I never negotiate with farmers. So I said, you name it. And you know what he said? He was like, I was thinking, you may be upset after this one. And I was like, say. He was like, €1 a potato. And I was like, huh? And he was like, well, €1 a potato. I work the land with hands. There is no machines. I have to stop the growth of a potato. And there is, as Rodney and Jeanne said, like nothing we add to the soil that doesn't come from our own work. And you know, I said, yeah, of course, €1 for potato. So when the first delivery arrived, I forgot to tell to my head chef, who is, it's very interesting, she's Californian, and it's a very important fact because Californian chefs are very much used to work hand in hand with farmers. And she was completely upset. She phones me and I didn't pick up, and then she sends me like 7 messages. She says, chef, the potato guy is here. And then chef, answer, chef, where are you? And then I think I just had something. So she was like, he wants €1 for a potato. And then finally I found the message and I said, yeah, agreed. So there is €1 potato on the menu of Hiša Franko. And I believe the value of that potato, the flavor of that potato, exceeds every piece of fish or piece of meat or piece of mussel or piece of oyster or caviar. And then at the end of the day, you know, it only happened once, and this is the answer, actually, the only answer to the question. And it has been last year with some guests from Luxembourg, where when I came to the table with that smile, how is it? Because we really put so much effort in our food that I really hope everybody's happy, because we are cooking maybe for our ego, because we would like to prove we can do a lot out of local ingredients, but of course also because we want to please guests and not because of the stars. And so I went to the table and I was like, how was it? And they were like, oh, excellent cooking, but price value, you only cook vegetables, practically. The meat is just a spice. And so I sit down, took a glass of wine, and I said, so explain me, why should a vegetable cost less than a piece of meat? Well, I didn't get the answer, but however, it's in the air, so maybe somebody else will answer in my name.
So Santiago, I wanted to ask you, Santiago has been running a very interesting project for Noma, Mexico, when they were doing a pop-up there, and he was sourcing local ingredients and finding local producers, you know, for some really interesting products. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. Now you have a restaurant in London where it's definitely much harder to do work like that. So you do serve caviar, you do serve wagyu, so ingredients that are not necessarily associated with the most sustainable. So tell us a little bit how you know, coming from that project, can you run a sustainable restaurant in a city like London, especially in a very rich, expensive neighborhood like you have your restaurant? Sorry for the question.
Hello. We try, you know. I think the only thing that we can do is to try. Mexico and the UK is a very big contrast in the way that we operate. I think there is no like perfect city or perfect country in the world, but I think you can try to take the best out of both worlds. The project of Noma Mexico was really interesting. Basically, there's a restaurant in Copenhagen. They moved to Mexico and they opened for 7 weeks. And there was like a waiting list of 7,000 people or something like that. And people were traveling to Mexico just to try what the chefs were cooking. And before that, I worked 1 year on the project as a project manager, visiting markets, organizing research trips with an R&D department, and visiting indigenous communities and restaurants and taquerias, and building all this supply chain that it didn't exist, to be able to use ingredients that people normally don't sell in Mexico, because we only know the surface of what we actually can eat or what can we have, you know. So it was a very, very interesting thing. I learned more about my country in that year than in all my life, and it was very specific. I think Mexico has a very interesting heritage that goes aligned with what we were saying about just like dairy-free, meat-free. We didn't, like before the conquer, we didn't really eat any like fish. So the diet was pretty much plant-based, and the source of protein will come mainly from insects, and it was, I think that got mixed quite a lot with the conquer, and now Mexican food is a mixture of so many cultures, which makes it delicious, but probably not as healthy as it should be. It used to be, you know, before. So we get inspiration from that two worlds of the contemporary Mexican food and the indigenous Mexican food. And I still try to go as much as possible to visit indigenous communities that they still preserving our traditions and recipes and ways of and philosophies just of gastronomy that they been preserving for about 5,000 years, and in the UK, when I arrived, I didn't really know anyone, and it was really difficult to create this concept that will be inspired in Mexico, but using ingredients from the UK. So that was the idea, no? Like ingredients from the UK and flavors from Mexico. So we put a framework where we don't allow ourselves to use any ingredients that they don't grow naturally in the UK or in season. So we don't use any avocado or any lime or any fruits or any tomato if it's not in season, etc. And we try to curate flavors with the products that we have, applying different techniques like fermentation and different types of just basically different techniques of combining wild food, etc. So in that regard, it worked out. It was quite hard, but then the hardest bit is to be able to, as you said, to have a sustainable, like full sustainable restaurant in the middle of the city, mainly because of the costs that having a restaurant or having a fine dining restaurant have, and the amount of people that you need to sustain that in terms of guests. You know, so we have for lunch and dinner, we have lunch around 40 people, and then dinner 60, and then we have a bar for 40, 50 or 60 people, and private dining room where we do 20 guests. And so then pretty much we are cooking for more than 700 people, 500, 600 people a week, and everyone has the same menu. So then you have to standardize that and be able to like deal with the pressure as well of people expecting to try what everyone tried as well. So they don't want to have like a different dish, etc. And also we deal with a team of 50 people that they all need to be aligned, and everyone needs to understand the concept and be able to do the storytelling of the dishes. So then we cannot really be as flexible. And I think flexibility is something that it's pretty hard for us. And also the expectations of guests in terms of they now a little bit less, but at the beginning they really, really push the value for money topic. So is this really value for money? And it comes with the potato story of Anna, and it's just the fact that I think the future is, well, like, it's just what it is expensive, or the real value is, it's more and more, and it's becoming more and more the craft and the hands of people making beautiful things, more than just buying a tin of caviar or just buying something that is just, you don't have to do anything to it. And when I say anything to it, I refer as well like to the corn in Mexico. Like, corn is our main crop, and it's like gold for us, and it's the base of all Mexican cooking. And just the fact to get the corn, the right corn into the table, it's also been a labor of love. We are growing corn now in Cambridge, and we have 1 hectare where we grow different crops from Mexico to be able to, that they can grow in this microclimate, where we can use it and start exploring ways that we can deliver something more sustainable.
So Iñaki, you come from Basque Country, which is one of the world's most important culinary destinations. You have worked at some of the best restaurants in the world. You have also worked with Santiago at Mugaritz and Noma, and then you were a sous chef at Nerua in Basque Country. Now you work in Amsterdam in a place called Contrast, where you are actually doing a really interesting project. You can explain a little bit more. So you are not serving meat, something that our Prime Minister will love, yes. And you're also serving all parts of fish, so correct me if I'm wrong. So perhaps one table will get the tail, one table will get the head. Can you explain a little bit about the project, and what kind of obstacles are you facing doing this?
Yeah, basically, well, when we opened the restaurant, the first point of view was talking about sustainability, and really thinking about opening a restaurant is not a very sustainable idea at the end of the day. So what we say to try to explore how to make it sustainable, because we are a very young restaurant, just opened it, very little team. Also, I'm not from the Netherlands, so we started exploring our terroir. And we want to start with the vegetables and the sea. The restaurant is in a boat, so it's in a floating system, basically. It's an old cargo boat, cut it in half and, well, prepare it beautifully. So the idea of the restaurant is I decided to don't give menu, because I realized that we are not sustainable. Our choice sometimes is what is not sustainable, because if all of us, we want loin, who's going to eat the head, or who's going to eat the tail, no? So I consider that if you are coming to my house, I'm going to attend you like if you are coming to my real house, I'm going to feed you. You are not going to ask me what you want in my home, no? So in this way, we are going to give you the best always, but we decide more or less what you are going to eat after a very easy question, that is what you cannot eat and what you don't like to eat tonight. After this, we will prepare the experience as much as better that we can for you to make it magical and beautiful. So it's a little bit this idea. And then every day we are dreamers. I mean, we in the restaurant, as I told you, we are very new, but we have these beautiful ideas always, and we are adding more projects. So we are not perfect, but we are trying to follow well all the things that, if you look to the past, zero waste is invented already. Making vinegar with the leftovers of wine is invented already. So we are just looking to the past and make it, putting back in the system of the restaurant in the most humble way that we can. And well, this is more or less the idea that we are working right now. For the next year, we are planning to start with the meat, but also we are looking for the problems that the Netherlands, for example, in this case have, like the gooses, that there are having problems in the farms because it's a massive goose invasive species. Also with the crayfish. So we are looking a little bit in this project way.
So the topic of tonight's panel is Menu of the Future. food of the future, if you will. And there has been many articles written on the future of food, future of restaurants, especially during the pandemic. Everything from fine dining is dead, plant-based is the way to go, eating bugs is the solution for the planet. Then we have lab-grown meat, and actually Dominique Kren, one of world's best chefs, she just started serving lab-grown meat in her bar Kren. So I'm just gonna ask, please quickly, like short answers, what's in your crystal ball for food of the future that's realistic? Go.
Look, I think obviously vegetable-based. I think meat is an important part of our diets, but we eat way too much of it. Certainly part of grazing systems and part of health of ecosystems comes back to animals. So I think that's important, but we need to readjust. It's not the main part of the meal, it's the flavour points that you can add from that, and like Iñaki said, using all of it.
Jeanne?
Nutritious food, so not necessarily quantity, but food that is full of nutrients. So this means that the soil needs to be alive. Lots of beans, I think, because they are also feeding the soil, and they don't just take nutrients from the soil. Also even plants, lots of like chenopod, amaranth, these things that doesn't need a lot of water. A lot of plants that needs less water to grow. So, I mean, meat there will be forever, and it's important, but for sure less meat as well. Yeah.
Séverine, and also maybe could you talk a little bit about your academy, which is something very interesting, as your academy in the restaurant.
I think that one of the important things for the future with food is that the whole world needs to stop using pesticides. That's going in our body. Someone once said that just a couple of days ago, we worry more about what petrol we're putting in our luxury cars than what we're putting in our body. So we really need to have a look at that. That's a really big concern. And yeah, at the Agrarian Kitchen, we have cooking classes where we teach people as much as we can about the soil. Soil is so important, and pesticides are killing everything. You can't grow anything if the soil is not alive. And so we have lots of guests who go home and start growing their own vegetables, their own herbs, sending us photos, showing us what they're doing. So that's really exciting, and it just educating people and educating children is really important.
Thank you.
Okay, so from my part, if I was someone who is not cooking in a restaurant, I would say that the future of the food is to be Jeanne. So, to know how to cook very well, so go back to cooking at home. Don't make shortcuts, but Jesus, cook. And, I'm not going to say that everybody can have a garden, but knowing the source of the food is so important. So start cooking and be Jeanne. From the restaurant part, which I believe is a role model one, because everybody, chefs today are stars, so everybody's a little bit looking at them as role models to what they're doing, the way they process, the way they source the food. Are they cooking meat/fish? I believe more connection with the institutions that are far above us, that is like ministers, prime ministers, governmental institutions. Why? Because, we can show things, but of course, I can be super creative and I can be super operational in my small world, but my day only has 24 hours. So sometimes to be able to, have someone to talk to, discuss a problem, and then, of course, get to medium quick solutions would help the whole country. And I'm honestly super proud that we have a prime minister who is opening this kind of conversation. But you know, there are ministries as agriculture ministry and blah, 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 so many of them, that this topic should be on the table on a single day. Sorry.
Well, me basically what I think is that we really need to slow down a little bit because, well, after all this globalization and how the world is running these days, I think it's very nice to really go back, you know, like to the old times, like even like thinking on using sailing boats or going back to this, use the power of the wind, just to try to reduce CO2 emissions, whatever. But as I was telling before, like I think more or less everything was working properly until we end up in this kind of very fast and modern style of living that is today. And I think more or less we have the clues, but we need to chill a little bit and go back to the roots, basically, you know, see what our grandfathers they was doing, how they was working the grounds with not that much fertilizers and doing them by themselves in the homes with the animals that they grow, and it's a little bit that. I mean, for me, I know that it's difficult what I'm saying because we are already like in 200 kilometers per hour, but I think it's important to have this in mind.
Hello. Yeah, so I think that in the future, people should have, or people might have less options to, like, let's say when you go to a supermarket in terms of things that are out of season and they're coming from another place in the world. I think we should have to work with what we have and what it makes sense, and allowing diversity to come from the wild land. That, as we were saying in the past, that is just also plants that are invasive or that they can just grow without us having to grow it as well. So just the implementation of biodynamic systems. That they will be like just to introduce that into the landscape as well. Like there's wild food that can also be introduced to live happy, you know, and just change this monoculture place for these beautiful diverse wild places. So a heavier wild food diet and fungi. I think is something that it is very, very interesting, like all mushrooms that have incredibly amazing health benefits, that there are some mushrooms that you can use as a coffee substitute and also to have more energy and be more focused and just improve your lifestyle. And mushrooms are also easy to grow, and they can so then they can exist a little bit more into your diet. Seaweeds, that they're also superfoods, and the seaweed farming is also good for nature as well. So the diversity of seaweeds and the more use of seaweeds as well. And also the fact that, well, I'm in love with insects, so I think to add insects not as something like gimmicky or like, okay, well, you have a caramelized fried cricket on top of your salad, but just as a source of protein, and just in ways that are delicious. You know, you can make an amazing cricket soup with tomatoes and chilies and mezcal and have that like 3 times a day. You know, it's just so good. And I think it's just breaking that barrier, like that barrier from us to those kind of ingredients. That I think that will be really, really, really important. And the open forum, as Anna said, with the chefs and the government to be able to make and create change together and collaborate together to bring nature into the cities as well. I think that's important.
I just heard mezcal. Sorry, kidding. So we hear, you mentioned invasive species, and we hear more and more about using invasive species in menus, something that, for example, a restaurant called Silo in London is doing really well, or Venisa in Venice. this is a question for whoever wants to answer this, but do you think this could be a solution? Or, with too many diners who are, they're paying a lot for their menu, would be a bit too, they wouldn't be too happy about having a squirrel or a Japanese knotweed on their plate. So that's kind of a challenge, no?
So, since you're just talking about the Japanese knotweed, japonski dresnik in Slovenian, we had it on the menu for several years in spring in the valley. In the restaurant, and actually it requires really a lot of work to understand how to make it work, but the final result, after a lot of work, and the food was for free because it's super invasive, and everybody's scared of Fallopa japonica, or Japanese knotweed. The result was like something like green apple rhubarb ice cream. And so when we were serving it, we always said, well, you are eating a problem. And everybody was super happy about it. And you know what? When I was in Tasmania, actually, somebody told me that there is a chef, and now it just, like, I lost it, who it was. But the same words were used for his cooking, eat the problem, right?
Yeah, actually, David Walsh of Mona, his wife, started a program around Eat the Problem. So looking at a whole bunch of things, and she got a cookbook together from different chefs who she gave a different problem to, different ingredient to, and they had a whole series of dinners based around this, where they had the different things, whether it was cane toad in Australia. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's very poisonous. It has a poison that it kind of ejects out of its skin, so animals that lick it or eat it die. But so they took this and then fermented it into a garum that they then served, or a whole bunch of things like that. So
I think it's about education. Like the fact of really young generations to see nettles as something that is just delicious, and just make sure that people go around just looking at these invasive species as just like delicious things, and for us to come up with ideas to make them actually delicious. And some of the invasive species in England, they were eating, like in the Victorian times, quite a lot, like nettles. It was like such a big thing. And suddenly, because of industrialization and all the like the Industrial Revolution, and like everything to have to be like organized, and all the vegetables needs to be sweet, and all these things, they just lose that tradition. And I think we have nettles in the menu every time that they are in season, to make sauces. It doesn't have to be like, okay, well, instead of a steak, there's a nettle, but it's just like a slow process of adding these ingredients to dress your menu and your everyday cooking,
So, but can I just, because of the nettles, I would like just to jump in where the problem then really starts, because one thing is you can do it at home, or you can do it in the restaurant. But like, for instance, why don't we use nettles in the industry? Like, honestly, we in the Primorska region, we are all used to use nettles instead of spinach in the spring. They have more iron, absolutely more healthy. And I can say to you the no comes actually again from the rules that are running countries, or from the legislation. Because during pandemic, when I started the project of saving farmers and using Tush chain, that was a supermarket chain, to practically reach the consumers. So we were teaching the whole team of Hiša, Franko, the industry, how to cook properly. And the funny thing is nobody is using fresh things at all. So to find somebody that finally can use something that is fresh is already very difficult. And then I said, it's spring, let's do nettle gnocchi. So like gnocchi made out of nettles. And everybody was super amazed by the idea. But when we reached the point, where are we gonna find nettles? I was like, there's so much nettles outside. This is like a weed. We have to collect it. Anyway, everybody wants to get rid of nettles. And there was a problem. Who is going to collect the nettles? And I said, I will send the forager. And then at the end of the day, everybody decided that we have to substitute it with spinach. So the problem is, I think, in changing the mindset of all of us. Not, I mean, first on the micro basis, of course, but then also on the institutional one. The industry is a huge problem, and the industry is actually the one which is making us a rhythm of what we are eating. So whatever we go buying in a supermarket, even if it is the biological one, it's actually the rhythm is given by the industry. And the industry says clear no to most of the things that could save a lot of things.
Let's be frank, like most of you are cooking in restaurants for the upper and middle class of people who have the money to afford a tasting menu in a fine dining restaurant, especially in a Michelin or 50 best restaurant like Hiša, Franko or Kol. Those with low incomes, which actually make up the majority of world's population, can't afford it and can't, for example, afford to, let's say, ditch meat or fish for some higher purpose or principle. So what is the future of their food?
About this, there is something that is true and not true in the fact that a fine dining serve food to, I won't say rich people, but people that decide to, that can spend their money for a tasting menu. For our family, for example, we are eating the same ingredients than these people will eat. So it's not, this food is not just for the people that go to eat in this kind of restaurant. This food can also be for people. Of course, maybe you have to grow it or, but the thing is like that restaurant, like fine dining restaurant, they also can support some reality that can be not necessarily an academy or not necessarily like a school or something like that, but it can be also just employed people that can grow good ingredient, really high quality ingredient, and to bring these people more near to good quality ingredient, because there is not just going to this restaurant that makes you eat this thing. You can also work in the field and you can eat this same very nutritious ingredient, even maybe more nutritious, because if you eat them from the field, they are even more fresh and they are even more healthy. And this is one of the solutions also, involving people in the growing of this food. And the people that can afford to go in this restaurant, they are also supporting this reality. So the problem is that really often, instead of involving people in the process of growing food, we are involving machine. I said this before as well, but this is really true. And there is also a really big problem. There is no access to land. For us, for example, now we have to move from the place where we are growing, and we cannot find land, we cannot find a house to rent, and everything. We don't have access to land because we are not farmer or we don't own already land and this kind of things. So the industry and the law and all of that, it's always made to make a bigger thing and to give access to people that already have things. And if it would be so simple to give more access to land and to give more possibility for a lot of people that are looking for jobs, or even if it's like, I don't know, there is not just immigrants, but it's just an example, to be able to bring these people to growing. I know that it's not everybody that wants to go to the countryside. I don't say that everybody needs to do the same choice I did in my life. But if there will be more possibility to do it, if it would be more easy to get into the process, then this food will not be just for the rich people. Because this is not true. It's not true. This food can be accessible to a lot of people because there is a lot of land, there is a lot of space, and there is a lot of people that can do this kind of job. And there is also a lot of money that is invested invest in agriculture, but it's invest to buy tractor and it's invest to buy infrastructure instead of paying people that can do this job and that can do this job with their hands, and it will damage much less the nature. It will be, and this is also investing in economy, because when people have money and can eat well, they are less sick, there is less disease, but there is also people that feel useful and there is less problem for sure. So stopping to give subvention to buy tractors and to buy machine, and instead starting to try to make people and giving money to people that can grow food, that can harvest food, and can also eat this food. I think this is really like a simple solution. I see it, and really like we are doing this, we are speaking on this stage today, and we are bringing things to a 2 stars Michelin, and we are now in this moment not finding a land to grow, not finding a land, not having access to space to grow vegetable. So this is like, it would be very easy, and it's not a matter of people that don't want to do this and stuff. It's a matter of law, and it's a matter of subvention and money that is not put in the right place. This is my opinion.
As we move towards the future, what is definitely changing is also guests' demands, namely intolerances and allergies, which have become a really big problem in restaurants, and especially fine dining restaurants. We are at a point where guests are coming to a seafood restaurant saying they are allergic to seafood. We are at a point where guests are coming to a chuleta place in Basque Country who are saying they don't eat meat. So should the restaurants be accommodating every whim of the guest, or is the future of restaurants also the ability to start saying no to all these demands?
I'm not going to be the only one to talk.
Yeah. I mean, like, at the moment, at the end of the day, well, I believe that hospitality is really, really trying as much as you can to make people have the best time as possible. Dislikes, it's quite like a different thing as intolerance. I think if someone is just allergic to something or not allowed to eat something, or is vegan or stuff like that, I think we can only try. We can try, like we try. We try to accommodate as much as we possible. We have a vegan menu. We have a vegan menu that is and menu in the restaurant in Col is pretty much pescatarian. I mean, we do have one meat dish, and we season the vegetables and the fish with like different like protein, like meat-based stocks and reductions. But yeah, so then that is one thing. I think as well that the problem that is happening with all these dietaries is also linked to the diet that people is having now. Like if you think about it, what did I eat this week? And just try to think, the things that I ate this week were good for me? And if you can answer that question, if that question is answered positively, I think you shouldn't have to have all these problems. I think it's also kind of like part of the same problem. I think if people will have a better diet and will be more connected with nature, and they will have less dietary restrictions. But I think so then I believe that in the future people will have less dietary restrictions because they're gonna eat better, and that restaurants will be able to be back of how they used to be 10 years ago, like with less problems, and just focusing in the art of telling this. These fine dining restaurants focusing in the art of telling these stories, and bringing beautiful moments to people.
Anyone else wants to?
Well, for me, the thing of the allergies, I mean, the allergy is something that you don't choose. So at the end, for example, in my restaurant, we really respect it. As I tell before, we are a pescatarian restaurant, but also we are very focused in the vegetables. Our menu right now will be like 70% vegetables, 30% seafood. But it's true that we have a vegetarian menu that is thinked to be a nice vegetarian menu, and we have a pescatarian menu that basically we just add the seafood. So for us it's very easy, so we focus on the vegetarian one. But it's true that, for example, when appears a vegan, it's true that my kitchen is not ready to make the menu that I will love to create for a vegan person. Because at the end of the day, this is a craftsmanship, this is an art, and we are also trying to do things that, okay, if I'm going to cook vegan, I'm going to open a place that is going to be vegan, and we are going to sell that. And probably, if I will be vegan, I will be more focused on going or finding these spots or these restaurants that maybe they can put the level of what I'm expecting to eat in a more higher score or something like that. No? And it's a little bit that. Then, yeah, I don't understand, for example, people that they go to a seafood place with a seafood allergy. Maybe it's not your place. It's the only thing that I can say is I don't really understand it. But this is my humble opinion about it.
Okay, maybe I would just add that the situation that is going on in the gastronomy, and I don't think it really is a lot the topic of what we are talking about, because yes, maybe more allergies are because we are sicker, because we don't eat well. And if you look 100 years ago, people didn't have allergies almost at all. While today, I think practically each one of us has something going on with him. But it reminds me, one thing is allergies, which I think it's a question that needs to be a lot more scientifically approached. The other thing is, of course, the reality of the restaurant and the nowadays dietary restrictions of people that has nothing to do with allergies, but with I like it or I don't like it. So, so many times it happens in a restaurant, like there is someone who says, I'm gluten-free, and then you say, is it celiakia? And he's like, yeah, almost, and then you bring the bread to the table, and then, of course, only that person eats all the bread out, and then nobody else touches it and asks for more bread, and you're like, I mean, and then you get confused, because then, of course, you start taking the problem not seriously enough sometimes. I mean, it could happen, and then you can really damage people. So, but I think this kind of a conversation can really last. But it a little bit looks like, you know, we came to a world that became so democratic, and this democracy entered to the kitchen spaces where everybody's right, and every guest, I mean, can actually say, I wouldn't, or require whatever he wants. That it reminds me of the situation when I started working in Hiša Franko, and my ex-partner actually already started like employing some rules, and he said, I don't know, a year ago he threw out the pizza oven, and then he said no to the Wiener Schnitzel, and I think to something else. And then the situation was that every second table, when they got the menu, they were like, pizza, Wiener Schnitzel? And he was like, no, this is a restaurant. And then they just stood up and left the restaurant, because it was so obvious that everybody who entered to the restaurant should be completely fulfilled his wishes. But it's not so. So, but this is like such a complex story, and we are there, but that's probably a question that will need a lot more time to be resolved.
So when we talk about sustainability, people seem to be focusing a lot on the organic label. But I think one chef once told me that we should have been focusing much more on local and not so much like organic label. Because what good does it do to serve organic avocados that are shipped across the world? So I think for me, one very, such example was years ago, I was in Hawaii, and there was imported Thai mangoes in the store, and you walked out and there were like trees of mangoes rotting on the floor. But now we're talking about a globalism, which is like a whole nother problem, which we're not going to solve, especially not tonight, I think.
Yeah, I think it's about the quality, but also about the nutritional value that these things have an impact in your health and in you, and also the taste. You know, like for us, we don't use ingredients that are only grow locally because we want to be sustainable. We do it because we believe that when you bring something from abroad, there is no traceability. Mostly a fresh product. You don't really know where those avocados or those papayas are been. Like you don't know. And I've been traveling a lot around Mexico and in local markets, in villages, and in different places in the world, and you can see that these ingredients that you get in Europe and in other places, they have been processed with chemicals and just before they even grow. And they've been picked unripe, and they've been changed. They change their color with gas, and then they get packaged, and then ship. And then it's not normal that you have an avocado in the fridge, and it lasts 4 or 5, 1 week without getting black. You know, in Mexico, you take the avocado, and in a few hours it's black. You know, like so. Then that is something that is just to consider. Like, if I'm eating that, is it good for me, you know? And is it for me good? Is it good for the guest for me to use that just for the sake of being just selling some like specific using a specific flavor or having my heritage into the food, adding my heritage to the food? And the answer normally is not. It's just it's important to have traceability of what you're cooking with, you know.
We have been talking a lot about farming, and I think it's on one hand, it's a very romantic idea of farming. But Jeanne, could you survive with farming, because you are employed by Hiša, Franko? So without it, would you be able to survive with a small-scale regenerative farm?
It depends what is the meaning of surviving. If surviving is eating, yes, because we have everything we need, and basically I'm employed by Hiša Franko for other things that I'm doing for Anna and for Hiša Franko, not really only for growing food. And I don't want to be rude or anything, but I've been having jobs that were paying me much better than the job I have now. So yes, of course, I would be able to survive without this this salary, because for me, farming is what I would do anyway, and then the rest of the time I can also have a job. So surviving is about eating. It's about raising my children. It's about having to drink. It's about having a place to live. And I mean, it depends what are your needs. I don't have a lot, and my life is really simple. So I think I'm surviving really well myself with farming. Then it just depends what is the meaning of surviving.
So we have touched the subject of meat a little bit, and for many, meat is a big environmental no-no. But I want to ask this question: if you eliminate the meat, are you paying attention to where your vegetables are coming from? How are they grown? Who grows them? How much of the habitat has been impacted by mass-scale farming?
That's an interesting question. I was talking to my gardener just the other week about this, and you know, there's a study that's come out that says if we are just eating vegetables and we're doing that because, you know, we don't want to hurt animals, you actually destroy more animal life in the process of ploughing a field than you do in raising meat to be killed for the table. So it's a very, you know, if we're going to pick out one little thing, we've got to look at a whole ecosystem. And, you know, it's really important, even when we grow vegetables, how is that impacting the environment? You know, if we're going to plough fields, if we're going to lose carbon from our soils by doing that, if we're going to, spray the pesticides that are going to create more problems, run off into our water and that, then that's still not sustainable. Like what is sustainable when we think about growing vegetables and, you know, looking at the way Jan grows vegetables, you know, many people might say, well, this is not going to feed the world, but it's important to look at, well, that replicated thousands, hundreds of thousands times over, it can. And in fact, from a small amount of land actually gets more nutrition, more vegetables, more diversity, more calories, let's say, than a single monoculture crop. So, yeah, it's interesting to look at the details rather than just look at, you know, step back and look at the big picture.
We have a lot of products now, even in stores, that say it's organic, it's line caught, it's you know, friendly, animal friendly. But how does it work? For example, like Iñaki, when you work with small producers, have you seen, you know, those that claim that are working sustainable, and what's the reality of that claim and label that they like to use so many of the producers and products?
Yeah, actually, it was funny because when we start checking all the produce and what sustainability is real, because I really trying to focus on real sustainability, not what the government says to me that is sustainability, because it's all about the stamps and money. And I think that, for example, a guy that is doing wine that is biodynamic should not be labeled like biodynamic. I think the people that they are doing conventional or using pesticides or whatever, they should pay for put stamps because at the end they are doing wrong. But anyway, for example, we went to visit in the Netherlands, in Zeeland, a machi farm, because they told me that the idea of using farmed fish is the sustainable fish of the future. So we went there, and believe me, I needed to leave the place. It was a round place, a pot where the fishes that are making round, and then an alarm sounds, and the fishes, they start jumping even before the food goes in the water. So even you think, I mean, it was so sad to see this, and I don't think so that this is sustainable in a way. So that's why our approach is trying to figure out what is for us the real sustainability about the product. But yes, we found a lot of things that really, for me, they don't have sense in that thing.
No, I just wanted to recall, Sid, Rodney, like in Tasmania, so often you see, I mean, big writings on the walls that say, stop producing the salmon, no to Tasmanian salmon. And I think this is like a great example because Europe hasn't reached this point yet.
Yeah, look, I think Tasmania is very lucky, and it's a little bit like Slovenia. It's small, and people choose to live in Tasmania. They choose it because of environmental reasons. It's a beautiful place to live. Salmon is being pushed as this is the way to feed people, you know, instead of like it's the new chicken. And there's a real pushback because people are living in communities on the rivers where the big salmon ponds are, and listening to Iñaki, you know, it's the same thing. And people in Tasmania, they dive, they forage food, you know, just like here. You go down underneath these ponds and it's dead underneath. It's just dead because all the excess food that goes down there, all the waste from the fish feces and things just kill the environment. So it just goes to show that anything concentrated like that is never going to be good. It's okay, we might be not fishing wild fish, but maybe we need to look at reducing our consumption of that. You know, we live in this amazing time in the world which is never going to be like it again. Like, we cannot sustain what we're currently doing, so what are the solutions in terms of what we eat? Okay, if we have to eat less fish, we have to eat less meat, let's do that, you know. Santiago talking about, you know, the insects and the seaweed and all of that. Okay, let's look at clever ways that we can have this instead, and we need to stop living this age of, I must have the lobster when I go out to eat, and I must have this and I must have that, and just say, okay, it's gone far enough. Let's look at what the new, like we're talking about, what the new diet is and can be, and the education based around, you know, we need to make these tough decisions now.
What can we have 9 minutes left. So just like quickly, everyone, I mean, each of you, what can we actually do? I'm gonna follow up on your answer here. Realistically, to contribute to a greener way of living, because let's say swapping plastic straws for paper ones seems to be more or less of a gesture, and giving up on meat and seafood, it's kind of an illusion, especially like the whole population. Same with probably eating bugs on a mass scale. So how can we, each of us, contribute to actually making a difference?
Look, Anna and I were talking about this just a little bit earlier today, so I'll start. It is a conscious thing. We have to be conscious consumers, and it's, while we might think we're not making a difference, little by little, it is everybody making choices in their life that revolve around the greater good. We're not good at that. We're very selfish as humans. It's all about me. But at the end of the day, you know, the understanding that making those conscious decisions each day when we go and we make sure we buy the local, and and obviously that's not going to happen every day, you know. You're going to eat some fast food occasionally. That's part of life. But, you know, every choice you make is a vote in one way or the other. So are we going to choose to vote for a future that is, you know, well, sustainable? Are we going to have a future, or are we just continuing down this road of abyss?
Yeah, I follow your idea, because I always say that eating is really politic, because we're doing it 3 times a day. It's not once every 4 years that we're voting. It's really a choice that is important. I think cooking and a lot, and knowing where the produce you are using are from, because even the whole thing of label, it's the kind of really often a big lie. So instead of reading the nutritious things and looking at the labels and stuff like that, really knowing where the things are from, and even knowing the people that are growing them, not because we just want to support our crew and the people around us, but just because this is really the only way to know how it has been grown. And that's the same thing. It's not just an impact on your body, it's also like an impact of all the society and the people around. When you eat things from the supermarket, or when you eat things that are unhealthy, it's not just about your health, but it's also giving always more power to maybe, yeah, like big company or big industry, or things that are not from here and stuff like that. So it's just like, yeah, deciding where we want the power to go.
I'll talk about something different, packaging. I think that there's a big problem in the world with all the packaging that's being done, and is another reason why we should eat locally or to grow your own food, so we don't have any excess packaging. In our restaurant, we never used to sell takeaway coffee. We never wanted to have takeaway cups in our restaurant. COVID comes, government shuts our restaurants down and says we can only do takeaway. So all our staff were taught we need to reduce packaging in every facet of our business. And then when COVID came, we had to now bring in takeaway packaging, which was really disappointing and was disheartening for years of saying no to takeaway packaging. Even though there are cups that are, you know, they say they're biodegradable or they can be compostable. Most cups are compostable in a commercial environment, not in a home environment. So if you put it in your composting system, it just won't break down. It needs to be industrial. And then there are cups that you can compost at home, but they just take, we've done samples in our own composting system. It's just still taking forever. So our staff recommend guests, how about you relax, enjoy, have your coffee here in a cup? And people are like, oh yeah, okay. Why don't I just enjoy 5-10 minutes of my day and just have a coffee in-house? So I think, you know, coffee cups is a really big problem. I don't think that the world has found a solution for this takeaway coffee cup. I'm not sure what it is like here in Slovenia, but Australians drink, you know, 3 to 4 cups of coffee a day, buying 4 cups of takeaway coffee. So yeah, I think packaging around the world needs to be looked at. We've just come back from Japan. I don't know if anyone here has visited Japan, but it hurt to be in Japan. The food is amazing, but the amount of packaging is unbelievable. We were offered some tomatoes in one of the department stores that had high-end food, chocolates, and they had these beautiful little cherry tomatoes, and they offered them to us, and each little cherry tomato was in its individual little plastic bag. And we were like horrified. So I think, yeah, Japan is a place that is amazing and beautiful, but yeah, they're an example of where packaging is out of control.
Okay, for me, I was really thinking what to answer. There is so many, you know, things you could say that could be implemented, but like I was just thinking of a few because there is no general idea. But for instance, when you go shopping, do your shopping list and follow your shopping list and do not look around what else you need, because actually this food waste is processed by our big eyes. Like, honestly, like all shopping centers are our traps. They're pure traps because everything looks so beautiful. But I need this one and then also need that and maybe some prosciutto, some mortadella. And then when you get home, you just realize that tomorrow you are leaving for a week. So who is going to eat the mortadella, the prosciutto and the cheese you just bought? So maybe the shopping list will save a lot of money and maybe a lot of food waste, but also you will skip the traps of IKEA, where you actually buy everything what you don't need and you forgot to buy what you need in the house. And then, well, there is the other thing that, you know, if that shopping list is very direct and is directed to people who cook, maybe the other side of the story is when the cities, and this has nothing to do with a small Kobarid because we are 600 people and we mostly have a few restaurants that work mostly in the summertime. They are packed and then they close down in the winter. But if you look, the city center are destroyed by fast food chains as McDonald's, for instance. So, and I'll directly say, and then I hope I'm not going to be killed this night, but like the place where my husband has been living for 12 years has got a new McDonald's downstairs. Beautiful city center, walking district, got the McDonald's. And the city has changed, the street has changed completely. So I'm from a peaceful, beautiful walking street, it became like noise, which is also pollution, but trash that sometimes in the morning you exit the building and you're just like, holy crap, what is that? And who allows that? So maybe, you know, how much we produce of the coffee cups and how much the fast food chains, who is going to start talking to them, where is their trash going? that's never-ending questions without answers.
And well, I think I'm with you guys in everything that you say. I mean, I think it's all what we can do all together is have a moment of thinking in all our choices, even if there are little or look stupid, but from using paper cups, not buying the plastic ones, you try to go walking, try to use a bike, try to see all these little things, and I think at the end of the day, if all of us, we follow this, and we have a look on our choices, and we don't support big chains and massive productions and products that are not clean and everything, I think is everything nice for making the change.
Okay, so I think something that we could do is to like bring just to be helpful, like bring your own bags, like have a bag of your own when you go shopping, or bring your own cup to drink water, or bring your own cup to have coffee. Spend more time with nature, and try to learn from nature and spend time with people that can teach you, so you can teach others, and your kids, your family, to be able to understand a little bit more, or just at least to care to learn something about your environment, and to eat to feel good, not to eat to get full, not to eat to feel bad afterwards, have a nap afterwards. It's also the quantity of what you eat in your daily basis and the amounts of things. So then also I think for us to be able to, just to care a little bit more about nutrition and about our own health, and just to be helpful, I think.
Thank you very much. So on that note, we are finishing this last session. Thank you so much to everyone, all of the speakers. Thank you for coming to Slovenia. I hope you have enjoyed Slovenia and you have learned something new and something useful. So thank you also to you for listening this super late session, and have a drink, I guess. Just me?